Hello and welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Scott Mailway, got Sports 25 to life, and not a whole lot of options tonight, but a couple really good options, I guess, depending on where you're looking. Obviously, Jacob deGrom's your chalk play of the day. He's $11,700 on FanDuel, $12,000 on DraftKings, minus 220 favorite against Philly. We all know the story here. It's a bunch of AAA players essentially in their lineup now, even more so now that Chase Utley's gone. So he's your obvious top play, but he's also priced like your top play. So I think he's the guy you want in your cash games. And if you can't afford him, I don't mind Hisashi Iwakuma. I think he probably doesn't have the ceiling that deGrom has because he doesn't strike out as many guys. But what he has done recently is pitch deep into games and pitch well and in some tough environments. So at $2,700 less on FanDuel especially, only $1,800 left on DraftKings, or less, I should say. Isn't that much of a difference. But obviously, you'd love to get both on DraftKings. But I think that if it gets you another really big bat that you like, I don't mind going with Iwakuma on FanDuel.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, Oakland's a little bit better against righties than they are against lefties. But, I mean, their lineup in general hasn't been very good lately. So I think you can feel pretty good about him. I mean, there's a couple other guys you can target. I think deGrom is far and away the top play. It's pretty hard to argue with, to be honest, on any site with any price difference between any of these other guys. So that makes it a little tough. Lance Lynn against Arizona is okay. It's at Arizona, which you don't love, 9,300. Lynn hasn't been anything special, but I think he's a decent, medium upside cash game play, I would say. I mean, he's been pretty consistently going 6+, 7 at times. Not a huge strikeout guy, but we have seen him put up 7, 8, 9 a few times over the last month or two. He's just an option, really, for me, not a guy I'm going out and actively targeting.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at other guys that I really like the prices on, J.A. Happ on DraftKings against Miami is a pretty interesting option. 5,800 feels like a steal for him. Minus 162 favorite against what's been one of the worst hitting teams. They've been a little bit better against lefties, but not anything that's going to scare me as long as Stanton's not in the lineup. So, I mean, at 5,800, I feel pretty good about him as a cash game play. You're not going to get a lot of strikeouts from him, even against a Miami team that strikes out a decent amount. But for 5,800, at least in cash games, I think you're getting some nice value there. You'll get a little bit of GPP upside if he goes deep into the game, gets to 6 or so strikeouts like you would hope that he could get to if he pitches 8 innings or so. But I like him quite a bit at that price to pair with deGrom and still allow you to get quite a few solid hitters in your lineup.
Yeah, and I don't mind that. I mean, this is a Miami team, like you said, no Stanton, Christian Yelich, of course, in the DL now too. So,
Yep.
And they already didn't have much power before that. So, big ballpark. You got to imagine, even if he makes a couple mistakes, there's not really any guys you worry about in that lineup that can really punish him. So, I think he's a fine option at that price. And then one guy that I think is interesting here, Atlanta, even with Freddie Freeman back, still been one of the worst offenses in all of baseball. No power. They struggle against left-handed pitchers. And Jorge De La Rosa, he's a guy who does strike out a decent number of batters on the season, 21.2%. Great job of keeping the ball on the ground at 53%. But he walks a ton of guys. He had 6 walks in his last game, 11% on the season. So I think, though, at his price tag at $6,600 on FanDuel and $7,100 on DraftKings, I think because those two guys at the top I think are so much above everyone else, I'd much rather do like what you did and go down even cheaper, try to get a guy, sub $7,500 to pair with my top guy because, you're going to want to spend on some of these bats, especially with all these other bad pitchers on the mound. So I think that De La Rosa is a fine middle-type option for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we're already getting into guys that neither one of us love. So, I mean, it's really a tough pitcher night. I mean, another guy you can look at, even though the Red Sox have been hot, Jeff Samardzija feels a little bit underpriced at 6,800 on DraftKings. He's a little bit more expensive on FanDuel, where I'm not super excited about taking him with one pitcher. I'm going to have a really hard time not just going to deGrom a ton on FanDuel, even with the high ownership percentage. But Samardzija looked pretty good against the Angels last time out, 7 strikeouts in 7 innings, only 1 earned run allowed. He just hasn't looked great this season, and with a Boston team that's been really hot lately, it's hard to feel really good about it. But I think as far as a GPP play goes, you can definitely do worse.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like you said, there is a substantial price difference to FanDuel. I mean, he's more than Iwakuma even on FanDuel. But
yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for probably the lowest owned pitcher that actually has upside, I mean, that's definitely the guy you're looking at.
Yeah.
Because priced right in between those two guys against the hottest offense in baseball. You got to imagine his ownership levels in GPPs maybe 2-3% at best on FanDuel.
Yeah.
Obviously substantially higher on DraftKings. But another guy you can consider, not a guy that I personally like really ever, Julio Teheran. He's $8,500 on FanDuel. DraftKings, he is $8,100. This is a Colorado team that, is night and day difference from Coors Field on the road. Julio Teheran obviously much better at home than he is on the road as well. But he also has big-time struggles with left-handed bats. And with that being said, there are some really good left-handed bats in this lineup, Cargo and Blackman especially. So GPP option for me, not a guy I would play in cash games for those reasons. But he is a guy that does, he is capable of pitching 7 innings, giving you quality starts. I mean, he had 11 strikeouts against the Dodgers a couple starts back. He has at least 7 in 3 of his last 4. So, I mean, he's a guy that certainly has upside, but he doesn't come without risk. And kind of pricey for a guy that does have, I think, a decent amount of risk tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's been honestly really good over the last 4 games or so here. He's a pretty decent favorite in this one. There's a lot of stuff to like there, but I'm kind of like you. He's never a guy that I'm really that excited about playing, especially so far this season.
Yeah.
I mean, Colorado's lineup isn't nearly as intimidating as it's been recently, especially when they're not in Coors. So I think he's going to be under-owned based on probably what he should be, which makes him a pretty good GPP play. But he's just like a little bit too pricey to like have any real upside on his price based on what he's done so far this season. There's not like, I don't feel like there's a like great chance he's going to more than pay off his price. Like you're going to be ecstatic if he does pay off his price, which is great. And I think there's a decent chance he does that tonight, but I just don't see him going out there and pitching 8 innings and striking out 12 guys. And I mean, that's what you really need. That kind of upside you really needed. 8,100 on DraftKings. What is he on FanDuel here?
85.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of the same thing. But he's a solid option, and he's a guy that, like I said, I think will be definitely under-owned because of that. People just avoid Colorado in general, even when they're not in Coors.
True.
So, I mean, that's the angle there for me.
Yeah. One other guy to mention here, and this is more of a matchup play and team overall, not individual matchups. Robbie Ray is cheap on both sites. You don't like that he's pitching at Arizona at home. Hasn't pitched particularly well there either. But the Cardinals still pretty bad team against left-handed pitching. 23rd in the league in WOBA, striking out almost 23% of the time. So as a cheap option, he's upside, but I mean he's not much in the middle. I mean it's all upside or 0 upside. I mean he had 0 strikeouts 2 starts ago against Atlanta, but then before that he had 8 strikeouts in 3 of 5. So I mean he's a guy you really never know what you're going to get. And he doesn't have particularly great stuff, but just because his team does, as a whole, struggle against lefties, and you got some key bats, Matt Holliday, Randall Grichuk, Matt Adams even out of the lineup still.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some pieces that are missing, but it's a guy that you throw in your lineup and you just hope that he doesn't get crushed because he certainly could.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, that's kind of how the rest of these pitchers go for the most part. I mean, I'm even trying to figure out who else to, like, even kind of recommend as a GPP play here.
I got one more guy if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, Ubaldo was the last guy that I was going to mention, and I do not feel really good about him against a pretty lefty-heavy KC lineup. So, I mean, you can go ahead on that.
All right. I'm going to go with Joe Kelly, and I know it sounds crazy because he's not a good pitcher, but he's pitched really well over his last 3 starts. 6 and 5 1/3, giving up 3 total earned runs. Another one of those guys that, I mean, he's not a good pitcher, doesn't have much strikeout upside. Facing a White Sox team, it's not a great offense, but it's also a really good hitter's park. So, I mean, if you have to pick someone out of this cheap bin here, I guess he's an okay option. But he doesn't have much upside. He's the guy that 5,900 on DraftKings. You play as your SP2 and you hope he gets you, 15 to 20 points. He's certainly never going to get you 30. He's just as likely to get you 5. But, I mean...
Yeah.
He has pitched well. I'm just not a believer that he's actually as good as he's been pitching.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, he certainly has confidence in himself, and that's, I mean, something to say about him. But like you mentioned, he's been pretty good. He's just not going really deep into games.
Yep.
But his strikeouts have been there. I think he's averaging 1 per inning over the last 4 starts. So he definitely looks a little bit better. And the White Sox offense isn't anything that scares you. So I have a hard time arguing with that. I mean, a couple other guys we can mention. I mean, Kavius Sampson for Cincinnati is ridiculously cheap on DraftKings because he's a relief pitcher. It's only 4,400. I'm not super excited about throwing him against Detroit, who has Cabrera back, but he is a small favorite in this game. But it's a 9-run over/under. I mean, you're just like hoping for something. It's not pretty at 4,400 even.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's something you can look at. I mean, Eovaldi against Houston has some strikeout upside, but he hasn't been nearly the strikeout pitcher we'd want him to be. That's probably like the last guy that I would get like excited about it all. I mean, maybe Chris Medlin for 5,200 on DraftKings against Baltimore with some strikeout upside, but I mean that's that's even scarier. Yeah, right. So I mean, the cheap guys today are not really like options. I mean, I'm going J.A. Happ, I think, if I'm going even remotely cheap. I'd much rather pay the 1,500 more than some of these guys and get what feels like a pretty safe 6+ innings with some like 7-8 inning upside. So that's the way I'm going if I'm going cheap today in GPPs. So it just feels a lot safer and more upside than the rest of these really cheap guys.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Chris Medlin's the guy that, I mean, as a pitcher, I really do like, and he is a really good pitcher, but they already said going to be 2 to 3 starts because he's been coming out of the bullpen. 2 to 3 starts before he gets to 90 to 100. So you imagine he's probably throwing 80 pitches tops tonight. And I mean, he just because of that, he just doesn't have much upside. I mean, normally in this matchup, if he's an everyday starter, then and an actual rotation starter against Baltimore in KC, you'd like him. You'd love him at this price because he does have that upside. But I'm not playing a guy on a pitch count because I mean, even if he does give you 5 good innings, you just got to hope he lucks into a win. And then you're conflicted because if he's getting strikeouts, he's throwing too many pitches. There's just a whole lot of downside with him tonight.
Yeah, right. That's exactly how I feel.
All right, well, that's going to wrap things up for us then. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.